She raises her head, a bead of sweat settling on her cheek as she pleads with the Duke to step aside. She tells him since they're no longer bound by contract he should stop showing up like that unannounced, but her entire composure crashes the minute he responds with a single word, "When?" He was strong down at her like he'd been hurt as he clarified that he'd never ended it. He grabbed her leg suddenly and resumed saying with those legs, "Don't run away from me." The scene transitions to a girl adjusting her ballet shoes, her lips pressed together in an attempt to conceal her pain. After the sudden accident that took her parents, Giorgio appeared before her naming himself as her uncle and didn't even bother to hide his overwhelming greed from the very first meeting. He bargained to get her inheritance and to escape he, who reached out his greed-filled hands towards her, she had to find a way to survive. So she hastily enrolled in the Royal Academy of Arts, which strictly restricts entry to outsiders including family members. For her who loved ballet, the Academy's enrollment papers that her parents had signed before their passing, that was her parents' final gift to her and the only way to protect herself while escaping from her uncle. And if she was recognized as the lead in that day's performance, she'll be able to become independent and join a foreign ballet company. She stood in the presence of her uncle who gave one strict order for her to prepare herself for marriage instead. He was still as rude as ever, but she didn't allow that bother her, rather she simply asked that they speak again after that day's performance, but her uncle instead shot into a frenzy. He demanded she listens to him, claiming after all he allowed her do something as useless as ballet. She furrowed her brows, pointing out that there was only a day left, questioning why he seemed to be in such a hurry, but he simply told her important people were coming to that day's performance, questioning what'll happen if he value dropped in front of them. He noted that she'll soon be an adult, so she wouldn't be able to keep bringing up her dead parents' signatures. He yelled that the rumors about her parents' wealth were just an illusion, asking if she knew how hard it was to run a business with that pathetic amount of money. She was so helpless she could only protest in her heart. He had the audacity to say it was hard? After taking every last bit of her parents' wealth? Adorned with all those luxury items, how could he even pretend to look like someone who was struggling? With a sinister smile he asked if she wasn't trying to sway those important figures too, claiming there wasn't any need for further discussion, he'll simply connect her with someone better, so she should drop out of that day's performance. In response she pointed out that she was among those distinguished figures, suggesting someone might take a liking to her. In her mind, she couldn't look at herself. The humiliation she forces on herself was unbearably bitter, but there was nothing she could do, no matter what she must stand in that stage. It was her last chance to escape from that prison. She explained that those distinguished figures will naturally approach her, so maybe she'll receive even better treatment, suggesting they take it as an opportunity. As she got ready that evening she quietly considered how there wasn't any guarantee that a career in ballet will work out. Maybe it would be better to leave for a faraway place once her performance that day was over. She convinced herself that wasn't rationalization, it was simply facing reality. At that time her colleague suddenly called her, asking if she'd heard the news. She explained that Duke Enrico Michel was attending that day's performance, a man who was famous for being extremely generous with his scholarships. Enrico Michel, known for blindly collecting art, yet despite his fame, there isn't much detailed information about him. Their instructor suddenly appeared behind them. She informed them the Abelanti Ballet Company will be observing them both, and they'd mentioned giving the privilege to officially join their company. The last words she left to them as they got onto stage was simple: "Make good use of this chance." Immediately after her performance, she quietly started packing her things, thinking of how if not now there wouldn't be any chance to escape from that place. She gripped onto her load, thinking of how she said they planned to take her away once the performance ended, but even the scene of being gathered by so many people must have seemed like an increase in value to that person. At last, it was finally gone to free herself from that suffocating situation. However, just as she walked through the snow wondering how she should leave, a man suddenly appeared and asked if she had a moment. Pointing at the carriage, he explained that he was waiting for her. Duke Enrico Michel. She got into his carriage and almost immediately he pointed out her huge luggage and asked if she was trying to run away, noting it looked too big for a simple stroll. Her response was a firm no, and he simply remarked that he'll pretend to believe her. She asked why he's come looking for her, and he immediately shared it was because he quite enjoyed watching her dance ballet, so he intended to offer her his patronage. She lowered her head as she thanked him for the offer but explained due to personal reasons it has become quite difficult for her to continue ballet. His expression shifted to a quick front as he asked if she wouldn't dance ballet even though he'd come to personally make her an offer. She remained straight, stating no matter the offer she doesn't intend to change her decision, and he responded with a simple, "Is that so?" asking if even if he were to tell her about the death of Baron Este and his wife. Her head shot up in an instant as she asked him to repeat that, and he did. This time he told her he had something to tell her about her parents' death, specifically, about their suspicious accidental deaths. Like there was someone behind her parents' carriage death. She asks him what kind of patronage contract he wants, and he reveals his condition. It's quite simple actually, you simply dance, just like a living doll. Following that, he asks her if she doesn't wish to know the truth. Her gaze softened as she asked if there was a chance she could know just even little of the truth, explaining that if she couldn't know that agreeing to the contract might be a little bit difficult. He simply glanced at her in frustration as he pointed out that she seemed to be mistaken about something. He noted that she didn't have a choice, asking if she didn't realize that the minute he found her, her plan to escape was already ruined. She didn't back down. She simply told him it didn't matter, she could stay there and investigate herself, but he just stared at her in shock, a single word leaving his mouth almost involuntarily, "You?" while she sat there, unable to say anything. It wasn't an accident from a year or 2 years ago, it was from 7, and asking someone to investigate would cost a fortune. And most importantly, she didn't have that kind of money at hand. Besides, if her uncle were to drag her away and sell her away in the marriage market, she wondered if she would be able to investigate freely there. She opened her mouth to speak later, asking that he gives her time to think. That night her head was in a turmoil. She knew she should refuse. She should have been almost over with her escape plan right now, but a part of her couldn't help but question what if there really was someone behind her parents' deaths, and even if there wasn't, if she shouldn't at least try to find out. If her life was destined to be unfree no matter what she chose, the ballet, the only gift her parents left her, maybe she could use it to achieve something. In a new scene, her uncle yelled at her in anger, demanding to know what on earth was going on between her and the Duke. Ehe explained that the Duke's aide had come find him that morning just when he was having troubles finding investors and offered to invest in him if he didn't interfere with her ballet. He demanded to know since when she'd been receiving patronage funds behind his back. But she only stood, feeling both in fear and confusion. She wondered just how much he knew about her. Waiting for her in the dead of night like that, and approaching Giorgio as an investor. The timing was all too perfect to be considered a coincidence. She tried to explain. She told him it wasn't like that and she'd only met him for the first time at the performance the other day, but her Uncle Simony didn't believe her. He accused her of lying to him just so she could hide the patronage money, asking her if she was claiming it wasn't like that, yet he'd come looking for him about her. She yelled back, trying to reach him, insisting it wasn't like that, but he just called her a sneaky little B-word, accused her of trying to stab him in the back, insisting she existed just to make money for him and she shouldn't forget that, noting just because she became an adult didn't mean she could run away from him. He continued pulling her hair, asking if she knew how much he suffered trying to keep that penniless household together, accusing her of not even appreciating his efforts. Now she was certain, if that hellish future was all that was left, the finding out the truth behind her parents' unjust deaths might just give her a reason to live, so Enrico was right. For now the path he's laid out seemed undoubtedly the best option. However, if he merely brought up her parents just to use her. Her uncle demanded to know what her relationship was with the Duke, and she explained again that she's only met him shortly after the performance and he'd strongly offered her his patronage. She intended to consult with him first about it, but the Duke was moving too hasty. He asked what she was planning to do and she simply tested a hand on her cheek. Then she brought up the marriage he was arranging, saying it might take priority, but can the Duke really be compared to other nobles? Besides, if his patronage benefited him as well, it was worth considering. So please, use me. He agreed she couldn't exactly just turn down the Duke's offer. However, he did propose something even more disgusting than all the humiliation she had to subject herself to just to get along well. He asked if she's simply going to be satisfied with a mere scholarship. Color drained from her face the minute the words left his mouth, but he only saw that as a cue to continue. He explained that she was at the prime of her life, the time where she was most valuable, and asked if it wouldn't be a waste to spend those years just under scholarship, suggesting she tries seducing the Duke. She adjusted, clean unconformable, as she asked him what he meant, but he just asked not to play innocent. He told her he was a man too and asked if she thought he was just interested in dancing. He clarified that he was saying was simply while she was at it, she should get close to him and aim for the position of duchess. Even if he doesn't marry you, if he falls hard enough, you could eventually live as his mistress, don't you think? The Michelle family is probably the healthiest after the royal family, so he'd surely hand you plenty of money. She stayed through that humiliation. She felt this urge to shove plaster into his sewer of a mouth, but she controlled herself. But what was certain was she couldn't take it anymore, and she intended not to let a single word more come out of his mouth. In a new scene, the Duke gazed out his window to find her step out of a carriage. He held a paper, questioning if he should bring up the carriage first. A smile appears on his lips as he thinks of how he'd brushed the information aside in the past, but it turns out to be pretty useful, which goes to show one will never know what life brings. After the butler informs him the lady is waiting in the glass conservatory. She speaks first, explaining that she meant to come visit him first, but she was a little late. He admitted she was, stating he thought she'd come straight to him after meeting with her uncle the previous day. She informs him she heard some things about her Ingles business and asked if that was also part of the contract, and he says yes. He tells her to fulfill the contract he'll create the perfect environment for her, saying all she needed to do in return was to just satisfy his eyes. She stared in silence for a while, before asking if he could explain in detail how the contract will work. First, he slipped a document to her, what he called the contract itself. Then he handed her an envelope, what he explained to be the first reward she'll receive upon signing the contract. Holding the document, she asks if it's the truth about the carriage incident mentioned before, and he clarifies that it was only but a fragment of the truth and she'd gain more the longer the contract stood. His eyes lingered on her while she went over the contract briefly. Compared to when he saw her from the carriage, she was even more radiant. It wasn't as satisfying as whenever she danced, but he thought about putting some jewelry on her while he was at it. Dressing her up even for casual occasions could be quite enjoyable. But flashy jewelry might ruin that transparent beauty. Maybe a clear diamond would suit her best? Breaking the silence between them, he suddenly asked if he should prepare her a room. He explained that he figured she might not finish reading the contract that day, and she explained that it was just there were a lot of legal terminologies, so it was a bit hard to get through it quickly. To summarize it, he stated that if she danced at his mansion 3 times, he'll give her a piece of evidence in return. She asked if he'll give her one right away if she signed the contract, and he said as courtesy he'll offer her that much. However, he quickly noted it wasn't just about dancing, she needed to satisfy him. She pointed out immediately that his standard of satisfaction seemed a little vague, explaining that it could change depending on his mood or preferences. He explained that was why he proposed a 1-year sponsorship, explaining that even if he lost interest and stopped watching her dance, he'll still provide the evidence. In return, she asked what'll happen if he were to create a reason to blame her and with the evidence, but he wasn't annoyed. He simply smiled as he thought she was getting bolder. He told her he wasn't a man with time to waste, so if he got tired of her he'll end it immediately, assuring her not to worry. She asked him to tell her now about the accident, and he switched up quickly. He explained that the carriage her parents rode in was missing a crucial part, and the coachman was found dead outside the carriage. She trembled as she told him they said the carriage overturned when the wheel came off, and suggested maybe the coachman was thrown out when that happened. However, he simply pointed out that he was found quite a distance away. Her eyes suddenly widened as the Duke's warm hand gently reached for hers. His words got to her like whisper, "For today, that's enough." She asks about the evidence, and he reveals he was planning to show her another time. He mentions how he stopped her uncle from getting close to her. He even gave a heads up about her parents' accidents, but so far he hasn't gotten a single thing from her. He admits the case was never properly investigated in the first place, the early records were destroyed and it was brushed off as just an accident. She asks why and he tells her it's his job to uncover the truth from then on, suggesting she simply focuses and takes good care of herself. I like things to be perfect. In a new scene, she stands with her friend in front of the Brilliant Opera Ballet Company's room for new members' auditions with her friend. She suggests stepping out for a while and coming back in if she's so nervous, but her friend just suggests they talk about another topic instead. She mentions seeing something in the papers that day. They found a body floating in the Bay River, but since it was near the slums it sounded like they wouldn't be investigating too deeply, and also the body was too decomposed to find out who it was. Either way, her friend suggests they be careful for a while, but before she could speak further a person suddenly spoke up, questioning aloud why she had to show up for the audition again. She thought she was too good for the graduation after party, remember? Didn't even bother to check who showed up. Guess she thought he graduate performance was enough to carry her. It wasn't that great in my opinion. Her friend spoke up for her, immediately calling the girl Eva. She told her she wasn't in any position to be judging anyone. She pointed out immediately that she and Emiliano weren't even in the same league to begin with. Just as they walked, a man that looked kind of familiar to her suddenly appeared. Her friend, noticing this, immediately explained that he was at the after party and was probably the director of the ballet company. His gaze shifted to her side and immediately she froze. Later, in the ballet practice room, a man quickly stepped forward and announced that the new member results will be announced after the audition. Emilia went first. While all the judges commended her on her flawless lines and all, the man she recognized quickly cut in, saying he didn't think she was all that perfect. He asked the other judges to judge with more care and suggested they stopped jumping to conclusions. After her ballet session, a man with blonde hair called out to her. He revealed he was waving at her all throughout and she was finally noticing him. He was no ordinary man. He was Antonio Chiavel, a ballet dancer whom she partnered with 2 years ago. When he joined the Brilliant Ballet Company, he was so talented he landed the lead in the year-end performance of Giselle. He complimented her, saying she was really amazing out there, adding that even the judges couldn't take their eyes off her. He asked what role she was thinking of auditioning for that afternoon and suggested she go for the lead or first soloist, but she just said she'll be happy making second soloist for now. He was confused by her reply, but only her knew the truth. The day she signed the contract with the Duke, she made up her mind, as long as she's tied to him, she wouldn't let herself stand out anywhere. No matter how good the Duke was at covering things, if word got out about their sponsorship deal, it would bring nothing more than trashy gossip. And if her uncle ever caught wind of it, he'll probably lose his mind and pressure the Duke even harder to marry her. She simply told him it wasn't just the right time. Afternoon came quickly and the auditions for the roles resumed. Since both new and old members were trying out together, the auditions moved quickly. Emilia was called out quickly and the judges were shocked seeing how she'd auditioned for a position other than the lead. They discussed how much she stood out and how she'd be better auditioning for the lead, but once the man caught wind of their discussion he cut in, demanding to know what they were talking about and asked that they not make any exceptions. In Nacho Street, she wondered how the place was. On the day they signed the contract, the Duke gave her that house in Nacho close to his own mansion. She looked up at it thinking it was nice that it was tucked away in the outskirts where no one will notice, but getting that kind of material support, she considered felt too heavy. Suddenly a man stepped out welcoming her, and also I informed her the Duke will like to see her. He explained that the Duke wanted to coordinate when they'll begin the transactions. Later that night, the Duke sat in the suffocating silence of his chambers. In that kind of stillness, memories from his childhood creep back in. His mother noting he was nothing more than his brother's shadow. Just stay quiet, don't think about anything. Family used to be something that erased who he was. But Emilia Eston, that woman, she's staking everything she has in something as worthless as family. Thanks to that I can stay close to her. And the closer I get, the more fascinating she becomes. She arrived and was immediately shown to her room, but upon getting there she immediately stopped once she realized no one was sitting there. She wondered if the Duke hadn't arrived, but just then she heard a voice questioning just what he was even doing, and before she realized it, she'd been pulled into the Duke's arms. He teased her by asking if she was waiting for him to seat her down, but she just explained that it was a misunderstanding. She saw that he wasn't there and was confused. He responded calmly and said, "Then let it be that I wanted to seat you down myself." He took her hand, then pulled her closer, pressing her head to his chest. He gripped her shoulder, then he led her to a table, pulled a chair and gently sat her on it. Then staring in her eyes he asked his butler to have them warm the food. He rubbed her face and then remarked that if she lost more weight, she might begin staggering, so she needed to eat properly. In her kind, she silently urged herself not to waver. Even if the Duke found her ballet appealing now, there's no guarantee that interest will last. If his attention faded, the quality of information might greatly diminish, so for just 1 year, exactly 1 year, she mustn't waver before that man. Afterwards he got a room ready and she danced in front of him. He watched with a hand supporting his chin, a smile on his face as he thought to himself, just like I expected, it was a satisfying choice. Once she was done, he asked her to simply keep dancing as she did that day, then the reward she will gain will increase even more. He signaled for something to be brought to him, then he walked up to her and shoved a bouquet of roses in her face, congratulating her on her first stage. Later, she stared at the bouquet of roses thinking the Duke was truly an unpredictable man. Instead, she really wished time will pass quickly. Everyday life gradually fell into place, greeting Zabetta became a routine too. Showing the Duke her second performance, riding a disgusted carriage to and fro from work all became a routine. Until one day, a man who seemed to know her well, suddenly approached her. She greeted him, the crown prince, and he, shocked by her formality, simply asked if they weren't once on more familiar terms. She explained that back then they were younger and apologized, saying she must have been quite rude as a child, but he just dismissed her words, saying her behavior was far from rude, rather he'd say she didn't know how kind she was back then. The man in front of her was Alessandro Traiano, the future ruler of that kingdom. 11 years ago, she first came to the capital, Desiro, because of her father's business, and that's when she happened to meet him. Even knowing he was the crown prince at the time, she laughed and enjoyed herself more than ever. While she stayed in the capital, they met 3 or 4 more times, but after she left, they lost touch. He brought up her parents' deaths and expressed his regret for not visiting them, but she just assured him it was fine. He asks why she's in the capital and she tells him she lives there as part of the opera theater ballet company. She wondered if he was going to dismiss ballet as unworthy of a noble, but to her surprise he told her it was splendid. Mentioning how even as a child she loved ballet. She was about to ask how he knew, but he just laughed as he mentioned it was thanks to the fond memories they shared. He asked her to keep his visit a secret and she agreed, then he turned to leave. As she watched him leave, a question came to her mind. Even though the same blood runs through he and the Duke, how could they be so different? A few days later, she stood outside thinking of how it was already her 3rd performance and that day was the day she could finally get some information. However, at that moment, her uncle suddenly appeared, calling out to her. Before she could react, he grabbed her arm and demanded she end the sponsorship immediately. She stood in shock, questioning aloud why he was suddenly being like that all of a sudden, but he only spat in simpler words this time. Cut ties with the Duke's sponsorship. She pushed her uncle away, asking him to keep his voice down. Then she asked why he was suddenly acting that way, but he responded saying she didn't need to know, she only needed to do as he said. She explained that if he wanted to end the sponsorship, he needed a valid reason and he'll also have to return everything he's received until then. In return, he declared that he could return whatever, asking her to just talk with him properly. Suddenly she called him, maintaining a calm delivery. She asked her uncle if he thought the Duke will only take back what he gave. He asked if she thought he didn't know that, but she just turned away, saying she needed to go see the Duke before it got too late, leaving her uncle in anger. In a new scene at the Duchess Art Museum, the Duke stared at a portrait with such interest. A thought came to his mind, usually calm, yet sometimes she can be as strong as a wave. The part is interesting, it's not something that seems easily broken. As he walked home that night, he witnessed his aide received a sealed envelope from a person. He explained that he was from the Royal Palace Medical Department and apparently a ball had been announced that morning. Apparently, they've invited a princess from the kingdom of Carant. It's to promote trade and friendship between the two kingdoms. He asked if the ball was the crown prince's idea and he said yes. The duke simply shrugged it off, saying it has nothing to do with him, and asked him to handle the invitation however he liked. Instead, he asked how Amelia was doing. He told him she was practicing hard, but also, something special happened that morning. They confirmed a meeting with the crown prince and the crown prince seemed genuinely happy to see her. The duke immediately turned, asking if they knew each other, and his aide responded saying 11 years ago they supposedly ran into each other while visiting the capital with Viscount Este. The duke simply questioning dryly, and he still seems happy about a meeting that happened that long ago. I have no idea what kind of nonsense the crown prince is plotting again. He ordered him to keep a close watch, saying by the time they noticed something, it might already be too late. As he walked back, he asked his aide to call for the jeweler too. The minute she finished her session, the duke informed her he'll be waiting in the dining with, as it was finally time for her reward. After finishing the third performance, she changed into her casual clothes and was led by Fabio to the dining hall. Once she arrived, he suggested they eat first. During their meal, he suddenly revealed he heard her uncle has been bothering her. Without hesitation, she admits he told her to refuse his sponsorship. He asks if she wants to refuse it, and she responds with certainty, saying she only needs information about her parents. Then the duke suddenly suggests something. As a reward for her performance exceeding his expectations, he could make sure her uncle wouldn't be able to bother her for a while. He wondered aloud why he suddenly wanted to end the scholarship, questioning who he thought himself to be. He should understand not to meddle. Or, does he just think my words mean nothing? He noted anyway she wouldn't find a better sponsor than her and asked her to just keep focusing on her dancing like she was at the moment. Then he asked if they shall move on to her reward. He hands a document and explains that the content explains, based on the defective carriage part and on the location of the accident. The carriage accident was a deliberate planned murder. Subscribe for part 2.